Hello and welcome to IndiePod, an indie games podcast, your weekly source for all the indie game news you need to know. This week we are bringing you 4 awesome indie game news stories before, of course, we hop in to News Cram for a couple, just a smidge, just a couple of quick news stories before we hop into the new stuff. God bless the crowd, your listener questions, and I don't know, whatever else we talk about on the spot, because that's just generally what happens. But before we do any of that, I would like to introduce myself, Vaughn, alongside my illustrious co-host, the biggest of average, Josh Boys. How you doing today, Big Josh Boy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, dude. I'm good. You know what I had for breakfast? Take a wild guess. Me being a chonky ass boy, what you think I had
Captain
for
Crunch.
breakfast? Oh my god, actually, I fucking love... here's the thing, though. Okay, here's another weird quirk. I enjoy Captain Crunch, but... at a, like, it's not necessarily a local chain because it exists within, like, I believe Oregon, Idaho, and Washington, but there's a chain called Winco, and they have a knockoff brand of Captain Crunch called, like, Colossal Berry Crunch. It's fucking better. It's so much better, honestly.
Why is it
like,
so better?
I don't know. They also have, like, a knockoff Mountain Dew called Mountain Rush. Fucking delicious. It's amazing. Like, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. They also have a knockoff of Tiki Punch. Way better than Tiki Punch. Like, I don't get it. They know how to make knockoffs, dude. I'm like a knockoff fan. At least when it comes to Winco stuff. Like, it's fucking awesome. But, yeah, that's not actually what I had for breakfast, though. I had
so what is it?
So we have the Market Street Albertsons here. Like, Albertsons is a chain of stores. I don't even know if they had it in Florida. Yeah, they might.
They did, but they like went out of business.
Oh yeah, when it was like a Safeway thing. Yeah. I remember that. My dad used to work for Albertsons actually. And then when the whole Safeway thing happened, he lost his job. It was super fun. But super fun. So
best memory of my life.
Easily, yeah. He told me we were gonna have to cancel Netflix, and I was like, oh.
How could you, father?
Yeah, I was like, how am I gonna watch anime? What is this? What are you doing? And then I just paid for Netflix myself. Yeah, exactly. I had a job, so I was like, fucking, I'll pay for Netflix. It's like $5, $10. Now it's like $14. I'm like, what are you doing, Netflix? Yeah. How exactly can you justify making me pay $14 for this? But whatever.
Because they can get away with it.
Have you seen the new Pacific Rim anime? It's fucking garbage. So, like, they cannot justify me paying $14. But what I actually had for breakfast, now to get back to it, I had a fat-ass plate of poutine, dude. Fat plate.
That seems way too heavy for breakfast.
Well, I guess I also shouldn't call it breakfast. It was just my first meal.
You were talking about how you're like, whoa, I have an upset tummy and I always have to poop. Yeah. Maybe it's because you wake up in the morning and you're like, let me fucking shovel all this junk in my...
Here's the thing, though. I also, I call it breakfast, and my wife also gets on me about this all the time. I call things breakfast just because it's the first meal I eat out of the day, but I don't eat it until, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. So it's lunch. It's fucking lunch. It's probably the only thing I will actually eat today, if I'm being honest. Usually on Sundays, since I have, I've got back-to-back podcasts and then streaming, I only eat once. So it's the poutine will get me through the day. It'll be fine. So I had some pulled pork poutine. It's fucking delicious, dude. It was so good. Honestly, I'm ready for this podcast. With the exception of, my mouth is dry as fuck right now.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Great. I'm not a fan. But Big Josh Boy, how you doing today? You having a good day? I mean, you're looking kissable. Let's be real.
I mean, when am I not? You know what I'm saying?
That's a point. That's a good point.
That is. No, I've been doing good, man. This weekend's been full of a lot of just being productive. I put wall mounted my TV, and I made a nice little one of those connector pieces so it doesn't show the wires, so it looks so professional. It's like.
Would it blow your mind if I said that I'm afraid of wall mounts?
No, I get it. I get it. Oh, also, you're afraid of fucking everything. So
I know. I'm actually I'm not afraid that my TV will just fall on me. Is what I'm actually afraid
That's a weird one. Because how often are you right under your TV?
Never know, dude. I like to lay on the floor a lot.
The minute I go under my TV, it'll fall.
It's going to fall on you. I feel the second you go, you're mopping, you're having a good day and everything. It's a Final Destination moment. It just happens to lose the screw 5 minutes before, and then it's I mean, they're also
Right
just
on.
not even that heavy, though. It would have to hit you, like, right at the base of your skull to kill you.
Yeah, it would not. The most it would probably do is it would, like, really damage your foot is more likely. But, like, you're not going to die from a TV falling
I mean, you might get some glass in your back or something, I guess.
I don't
Like, if it fell, like, on you that way, you know what I mean?
I think it would still just, like, thud into you, and it would just be impact damage. It wouldn't be, like, unless you have, like, a really pointy shoulder blade that would, like, stab into it. Like, I feel like it would just hit you, and it would kind of shatter, but it's not gonna, like, fly everywhere.
I might be a chunky boy, but I got these fucking broad shoulders, big boy. Like, I'll fucking stab a TV. I ain't worried. I can feel it. Yeah, I got this thick-ass neck to hold up my gigantic watermelon head. I could break a TV. I'm pretty sure.
True. I mean, I didn't say you couldn't break a TV. That was never my quote. I just don't think it would break the way you envision it.
That's a fair point. So you're being all sorts of productive this weekend. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's great, except the weekend is over pretty much, and I've been productive and done nothing fun. So living the adult life, baby.
It's kind of weird. So, like, I have Sundays off, but I kind of don't since I do these podcasts. Like, I get ready for this podcast. I do the podcast. Then I get ready, do Go Beyond, and then I stream right after it. So it's kind of like I work on Sunday.
That's your day.
So, yeah, I actually, like, I forget that I actually have this day off. Like, my wife just the other day was just like, oh, sweet, it's going to be this week. It's finally your weekend. You don't have to work. And I was like, well, I mean, I still got to do it. And she's like, yeah, but you did that to yourself. And I was like, you fucking got me, dude. I did. I did it to myself.
My wife says that to me all the time, too, because I generally will have these things where she'll be like, oh, you have this time off. And I'll say, like, no, I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And she's like, yeah, but you want to do that. And I was like, yeah, but that's not the point. It's like, I still have it. she's like, well, why don't you just take less things? And I'm like, the things aren't the problem. It's time. It's like, I need more time to do the things that I want and more things that I want to do.
Dude, the grind is so real when you're trying to, like, make any sort of content on the internet or just, like, having a life outside of it. It's, like, it's fucking ridiculous. I was thinking about it last week. I was just like, I put more time and effort into the shit I put on the internet than I do anything. Even my own job, I'm fairly certain. Like, it's kind of weird, honestly. And, you know, like, some people enjoy it, and that's awesome. Thank you so much for being in the Discord. Thank you so much for listening. But let's hop into some housekeeping. Of course, check out our awesome new developer interview going up with the team from Snoozy Kazoo, the developers of an upcoming game called Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. That one's, of course, going live this Wednesday, the 10th of March. We're in March, right?
We are.
March is the month that this is right now.
March is the month that this is. Yep, that is
it's
good
going
English.
Up March 10th, of course. 1 day after for patrons, 2 days before for plebes. So please check it out. I'm actually really excited for this one, mostly because I'm super excited for the game. So
it looks
I'm
super
stoked.
Cute.
It does. It looks awesome. Plus, it's got the weirdest fucking name. Like, I hope you brought that up in the.
Yeah. Of course.
In the fucking interview, because you're like, "What's up?" Like,
one of my favorite parts about this was we started talking about taxes, like legit taxes, at the end of it, because they mentioned that one of the things after creating their own business and, like, the fact that, you know, you create your own company, you have to go through a lot of this. I was like, oh, did the game progress at all after you actually knew what the fuck these documents and taxes were? Because, like, you know, you don't know what any of this stuff is, and then, like, yeah, some of the, like, the forms that you see in there are, like, realistic now and they weren't before, just because we didn't know about all this stuff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, you know, most people who, like, it won't matter, but I just think it's a unique little, like, twist on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also ironic that they had to do taxes after making a video game that's Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. I wonder if they just sat there for a second and they're just like, do we commit to the bit?
Can we get away with it, though?
Like, do you think we're going to be audited? Like, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe.
Nah.
Like,
come on. You'd have to be crazy to have that title and then also do it. It's like...
Yeah, they're just sitting before, I don't know, the, like, Supreme Court of Auditors or whatever. People asking them for money. Like, I don't know how the United States works or whatever these developers are, but they're just like, hey, yo, like, we had, like, it's called Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. What did you expect us to do?
Yeah, we literally
fucking
told you.
Do our taxes? No. I'm fucking dumb. God.
That's
get your head out of your ass. Yeah. Got to commit to the bit. You got to do it. And I imagine that the person overseeing would be like, Fuck, dude, you got me, bro. You do.
Court adjourned.
Yeah, and then the fucking judge hammer. It's called a gavel, but you gotta love how many people just call it a judge hammer.
Judge hammer.
Like that nobody understands is called a gavel. And of course, please naturally check out the developer interview, but check out the IndiePod store for our t-shirts and stickers. I got our PayPal figured out, so we will soon, next month, we'll have enough money to purchase new designs for the Podnot so I can make some new and cool merch. So be excited. Hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers people are excited. And of course, if you are a patron, you can actually get 10% off all of our merch. You can check out our t-shirts right now that are all, it's, the merch we have on there currently is super cheap anyway. Like my philosophy toward merch is you got to at least have something that just anyone can buy. Kind of a deal. Like I hate when you go to buy a sticker of your favorite, like you go to find like a kind of funny sticker, or like you go to buy like any kind of a sticker and it's like fucking
$7.
Yeah, like you see it and it's like fucking $15 or whatever. You're just like, in what world do I buy that fucking sticker? In what world? It doesn't make any sense.
I'll never buy stickers because I don't.
You don't like to put stickers on shit?
Nah, I don't. They're too permanent. I get this like anxious feeling of like it needs to be on the perfect thing that I'll never get rid of, and so then I never put a sticker on anything, and then a sticker just kind of like sits in a drawer, and I'm like, what the fuck am I using this for? It's not going anywhere. They're too permanent. All right, I can't do it.
If you didn't know, we have some super cheap merch. We have a t-shirt that is an IndiePod Appreciation t-shirt that is, I believe, $15.99, and then we have a sticker that's $7.99. They're both fairly cheap. We make like $1, I think, if anybody purchases them. I basically tried to keep it like as low as possible. We still get something, but you also don't have to pay much for it because I just want people to check out the merch, to check out the podcast. So please do so. We will soon have some other stuff up there that I'm quite excited about. Check out the YouTube channel, just IndiePod over on YouTube. Quick like alert to everybody, the name of the YouTube channel is actually going to change soon, just because I am actually developing a website that is specifically about like indie game news and indie game created, like indie content and stuff like that. Soon, once it kind of like gets off the ground, we're actually going to go into more like indie content versus just indie games. So I'm actually really excited about that, but it will soon be changing. The YouTube channel will soon be changing to the Podnot versus IndiePod. And that website is actually thepodnot.com, and that's just naturally all one word, THEPODNAUT.com. And soon we will have, right now it's technically got like placeholder articles, but by the time anybody hears this, hopefully I have set up some other stuff there, but go check it out. It's going to be more. I'm looking for writers, so if anybody's listening to this and they would like to write about indie games, whether that's like news or reviews or anything, hit me up. In the about section of the website, there's like a write for us button. You can just click. You can send me a notification. I'll hit you up, but do so. Head over to the YouTube channel right now, IndiePod, later the Podnot. Subscribe for all sorts of awesome stuff. Josh just put up an Everhood review. It's choice. It's pretty good. It's pretty fucking good. I liked it a lot. I loved how in the middle, like that one section where it's going all haywire, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That part got me. I loved that shit. That was awesome. And a few more things, of course. Please leave us reviews on any sort of listening platform that you can do so. And lastly, thank you so much to our amazing patrons. We'll see Mixomatosis, a.k.a. Mix, Zach Durham, Chase Hopkins, Philip Renshaw, the Wombat Emperor of Australia, Chris Penwell, always drinking tea, Josh Nichols, Active Josh, and lastly, Mr. Sam Fillion from Canada. I tell you that Chase refuses to call Phil the Wombat Emperor of Australia? What the fuck is that about? It's his God-given name, dude. Jesus wrote that on his birth certificate, and you're refusing to call him the Wombat Emperor of Australia? That's fucked up, Chase. That's fucked up.
I enjoy Jesus wrote that on his birth certificate. I really like that as a quote.
That's how that works, right? So Big Josh Boy, let's talk about the games we have been playing.
All right.
I'm gonna be honest. Are you fucking with me? Because you wrote down "There is no game" by Draw Me a Pixel. Is this a game?
It is a game, but there is no game.
What? Okay, tell me about "There is no game."
So I was on Jenny's stream the other night, So our lovely guest who was on a few episodes back, and she was going through which was a really cool thing, literally just going through a bunch of indie games that she thought were cool and just kind of recommending them and just chatting with the chat and talking about games and stuff like that. But this was one of them that came up, and it was noted as one of those games that kind of throws you for a loop and you're really not sure kind of like what's gonna come next, and it's a very interesting idea. So There Is No Game, semicolon Wrong Dimension, is the creator calls it kind of like a sequel from a game jam version of something that they had created a few years back. This came out looks like 2020 is when it came out. So there's a Steam version and a mobile version. I picked up the mobile version because it's cheaper and because I have that Google Play just survey money that I just spend every so often to get free stuff. So I ended up just picking it up. I think it was like $5, not a crazy endeavor. But it's basically this game where you get in there and a narrator is talking to you and is saying like, hey, I'm so sorry, but there's actually no game here. Like, sorry, like user, there's no game. You just go, read a book, go outside, do something with your friends. And you're like, what? And so while he's saying that, you have like a faceplate of something, and you like find ways to unscrew it, and you like are getting to this like button that says to start, and he like will then hide it and be like, hey, stop that, like what are you doing, like whoa, and will basically like yell at you and tell you like, oh, you can't do that, and try to interact with you and stop you from playing the game that is behind whatever wall there is. And it's like, as you keep playing, it goes into this very heartfelt story that you don't expect, and it goes into like a number of different dimensions because you keep getting thrown into these different areas because of something called Mr. Glitch, which is just a glitch in the game that they gave a name. But I won't go into the actual story because I think it's worth just playing through and seeing it. But it's a really good puzzle game where it's very point and click, where it'll be something like you have a number of objects that are on the screen, and you'll have to use them to then interact with different things. Like there was one level where you were in front of a computer monitor, and you were able to like look at the sides of the computer monitor to find different hints and clues, and look behind it, able to like actually pull out the wiring that was like the video cable, like the old school game consoles, like the N64.
Yeah, the like red, yellow, and green.
Yeah,
the AV or UV cables, AV cables.
Sure
visual cables, I think is what they're called.
So it's like the red, yellow, white is the one that they have in the game, and there was like a red, blue, green one, I think, but I don't remember the difference between them because fuck it, I don't know.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't even think I ever fucked with the like blue and green ones. I think it was just like red, yellow, and white. I think you're right.
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not important to the story. So like, there's a part where you can pull out and put in that cable so that you can actually see the monitor. And there's literally and this is kind of a spoiler, but fuck it, like whatever. Where one of them you can pull out the cord and it'll turn into that static like you would normally get on a TV when it's just like when there's nothing there, there's no input, like that old like black and white like pixelated like thing that it does. Mm-hmm. And so there's a part where you need snow. And you're looking for snow, so you take that thing out and then put like an ice cream cone and interact with it, and you get like snow, which is this white pixelated shit. So it's very clever, very weird, like puzzle-based game where you're also going through this narrator talking to you. So very similar in a way to like Stanley Parable and those kind of games, where there's a story behind it and you're interacting with this narrator while you're doing certain things. And like he'll say things all the time where he kind of puts his foot in his mouth, where he'll be like, oh, I wonder why this is there, and he's like, oh, don't look at that, kind of a thing, like little hints to be like awesome. In case you don't know what's going on, like he'll kind of give you the clues. I'm really enjoying it. It's like I said, it was pretty cheap. I don't want to give too much more because honestly, like a lot of it is really just experiencing it, but it's pretty good.
It looks really, really interesting. I honestly, like, I don't think it would necessarily be a game for me, but I do think it's very, very interesting. It's over on Steam. It is $12.99, which is actually super cheap, and you can also pick up the soundtrack if you'd like to for an additional $5. The game looks really, really cool, but I know for a fact that, like, even if I did buy it, I'd never play it. So instead, let's talk about Everhood by Chris Nordgren and Jordi Roca, something like that. So you obviously, like I said, put out a video review on this. It's very good. Head over to our YouTube channel and check it out. If you're already there watching this, why not watch that after? But Big Josh Boy, tell me about Everhood.
Yeah, so I won't talk too much because obviously I talked a good amount in my review. But I think I just wanted to shout them out because I think my review in some cases felt a little more negative than I wanted it to come off as. I kind of wrapped it up at the end being like, there's something for everyone. But like, I think that the one thing I want to say is basically, and we've talked about this once before in another episode when I talked about the demo, but this game is so interesting in the idea of what I deemed as an anti-rhythm game, of it being that you're fighting against the rhythm because playing this music game where the notes are actually the objects that you're trying to actively avoid is such a cool idea. Like, it's so cool. There are obvious issues with it because, like I said, you never really fully get like that groove of like playing a rhythm game where you're like playing to the beat of the actual song, right?
Yeah.
So it is a little different, and it can be a little like a little lackluster in some of those levels that aren't as crazy or trippy. Like, I wish there was, what I'm really excited for that's coming later that they've hinted at is there's a level editor, which I think is going to be nuts if you can go into like putting your own visuals or weird things into it, or depending on how crazy they go. Like, I'd love to see more levels that were like those trippier ones that I showcased in the review, just because those were the moments where I was like, oh, this game is like really unique. The playstyle is a lot of fun. Obviously, there's some accessibility issues because like certain people probably cannot look at that game and be okay. Like, I'm sure there's like,
it very much seems like a seizure-inducing kind of a game.
It very much is. That's why I literally put the same
you
warning
put it at the beginning of the,
because I was like, this is, I'm showing stuff from the game. Like, you very much could have an issue with it. Like, I don't want anyone to watch that and be like, oh, what is this? And just like all of a sudden start seizing out. Like, cause that's not cool, man. Yeah. But the game, like the story wise to it, they feel very Undertale-ish with having, I mentioned it in the review, but like a good and bad sort of, it's not as cut and dry as that. Cause I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but you're effectively killing a lot of people in the game. But there's a good and bad, so to speak. But there's a lot of like very much you go here and you try one thing and then you could like save scum, so to speak. But it's not really the same in these games, I don't feel like. But go back and try something a little different and get like a completely different response back from certain characters. Or if you talk to characters multiple times, they'll give you multiple responses. So like there's a lot of time that you can invest in this game and really enjoy it. So I just wanted to come on and say, like, I do recommend this game. I do think it's fun, but it's probably just not going to be for everyone. And some of the story bits can be a little like, I don't know, just felt like it was too much at times in a little bit. But I still enjoyed it a lot.
Do you feel like, obviously there's the double-edged sword whenever anybody brings up a certain game when referring to yours, but do you feel like the constant comparison that this is obviously going to get to something like Undertale, do you think that will like hurt or hinder it, or do you think that that might help it in the long run? Because like what I mean by the double-edged sword is like, of course, it's going to like have way better SEO because it's going to be related to Undertale. People are going to search Undertale, games like Undertale. They're going to come out with like Everhood and be like, oh, cool. And they're going to come up with things like Heartbound and stuff like that. But then like playing Everhood, do you think people going in with the mindset of like, this is going to be like Undertale will actually hurt it? Because it does seem very weird. And also, well, I guess I have another question, but I'll wait until you answer that one.
Yeah. I think it's a great point. I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head that it's a little bit of a yes and a little bit of a no, because I think that going into this and thinking Undertale, you think of a story that really, pulls at your heartstrings, that you really have thought of as far as like a lot of backstory. And granted, this game does have some of it, and a good amount of like a very interesting reason as to why people are in this strange world known as Everhood. And I don't want to speak for everyone because I just think that this story didn't stick with me as much as it did Undertale, so to speak. So like, yes and no, because I don't want to say that it's not as good story wise. I just don't think it was the story that I was looking for. So like, I guess there is an argument to be made that could have had an effect on me, and because I didn't get a story that was at the same level I was looking for, that I had a negative view on it. But I think that in the world of indie games and in the world of, marketability, I think every ounce of help is needed. And like, if getting people to understand that this game is possibly close to something that they might like by saying it's close to Undertale, then like, so be it, right?
Yeah, even if they come to it and they're just like, it didn't hit the marks that Undertale did, but it still kind of blew me away in a very different way. Like, it's very possible that they play the game and they're just like, I expected it to be like Undertale and it's not, but I'm actually into it, kind of a
right.
deal.
And that's kind of how I was too, is, like I looked at it from what it was, and I kind of had the same mentality that I did when I said that I played the demo, that I was getting to a point at the end of the demo where I was like, I'm kind of getting to do the same. Like, a lot of the levels felt samey, and then they had that crazy one at the end, and I was like, this is really cool. And then it still kind of felt like very much the same at the end of playing. But like, that's not to say I didn't enjoy myself. I just think that, it's an 8 out of 10 versus like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, right?
Okay, awesome. And the last question I wanted to ask you pertaining to Everhood is, when you initially talked about the demo, I asked you about all the like weird little mini games and how prevalent you think they would be. Now, having played the whole game, did they show up a lot?
There's a good amount. I showed a majority of them in my review, to be honest. There's a lot of the racing game. There's that bullet hell one. There's the one with
did they show up
the
multiple
fire pit.
times? Like,
no.
is it only one time, or did they show up a bunch of times?
That's the thing, is those ones that I showed, they only show up for the most part one time. There's only one that doubles up, at least if my memory recalls correctly, and that was the tennis game. There is a second version of it. But for the most part, no. It's like you have those little mini games spread throughout, but most of the levels, or the majority of your time is going through each of those levels, those battles, and then as you hit a certain point in the game, you'll have to play all of those a second time with that new mechanic of being able to throw powers back at people.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, Everhood looks really, really cool. Once again, I'm probably not going to play it just because I couldn't even beat Undertale, but hey, the game looks really interesting and I loved your review.
One thing that I'll say to combat that, and one thing that I didn't talk about in the review because it just didn't fit, is I think the level design, as far as difficulty goes, is done really well. There are multiple difficulties. There are 5 different difficulties, all the way from if you get hit once, you die, to having a crazy amount of health regen. And it's done in a way where the difficulty does not change the notes that come at you. It changes how you regen your health, because you have always 3 hits that you can take before dying. And as long as you wait long enough without getting hit, your health will regen. And so they just make the regen faster and whatnot to kind of make it easier for you. And the way the levels are designed, the music is set up, and the way the notes are set up is clearly done in a way where they give you a challenging section and then lay off, and kind of always make it where you'll usually get hit no more than twice in a tough patch of things. And then usually if you would have gotten hit that third time, it's because you were fucking around and it's like, it's your fault kind of a thing.
Yeah, you rolled into it kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I think the design, the way they did it was really smart. Whether it was intentional or not, obviously there could have been just like they just got lucky on it, but like they did it, from what I noticed, in a smart way, because I didn't die a lot in this game. Like, I didn't have an issue where I had to restart, other than like the end boss where they literally tell you, they're like, it's going to be tough. It was that one with the cat boss where like there's a part where like if you look at it, like you could tell there's a clear difference between what those levels look like, and that one was rough. But otherwise, like, a lot of it just felt kind of like normal, of just like going through the game.
I like that approach to difficulty, though, where you still get a similar gameplay experience, but it's still easier for you. It's kind of like the thing with like Souls-like games, or the Souls genre, is it always comes up every time one of them comes out, but they're just like, they need a difficulty slider. And fucking From Software is just like, we don't make difficulty sliders because we make games the way we want you to play them. And it's just like, there are ways, at least in the way you're describing Everhood's difficulty, like changes in difficulties, to still get a similar gameplay experience for every person, but it's just a little bit easier if they choose for it to be. And I think that's really cool. I think that's awesome. Like, That honestly kind of changed my tune. Like 5 minutes ago, I was like, nah, I probably won't ever play this game. Maybe I will now. Maybe I'll check it out. Everhood, I like the style of it. I think it's cool. I mean, Undertale didn't fucking change my life like everybody made it seem like it was going to. I also didn't fucking beat the game. So
I mean,
that.
yeah. And I won't say that, like, I liked Undertale, but I wouldn't go to the level that people have such passion for it. Like, I see people who are just like, they'll die for this game, or they're like, I'm crying at the end of these different parts, and I'm like, no, it's a sweet story, and like there's a lot of good to it, but like I'm not ever gonna be that person. But
yeah. So some games that I've been playing this week, I revisited a game I actually tried out, I believe in like late 2019, early 2020, is Hellpoint by Cradle Games. I've of course been like super into Souls-like recently because of my like 2020 games illusion and just like streaming Dark Souls 2 on Twitch, and I've actually noticed that me playing like Dark Souls 2 has made me at least somewhat better at other Souls-like games, which is a little weird. Like, the muscle memory kind of got me. Wow. So now hopping into Hellpoint, which actually has a little bit like of a faster combat loop, I'm kind of like strafing all over the place. Like, I'm surprised how decent I am at this good.
Are you good at games?
I am at this good. No, I'm not good at games. I'm just surprised that I'm not dying as much as I thought I would be in this game, which is a little weird. And when I do die, and here's the thing that still annoys me, and I may have brought this up when I initially talked about it. Once again, Hellpoint by Cradle Games. And I received this code way back when from the developers, so take everything with a grain of salt that I say. But when I die, it is never because I like, and I'm gonna be real here, and this sounds like me fucking jerking myself off here, but it is never because I made a mistake. And that sounds weird. It's always a hit loop. You often get stuck in hit loops that don't make any sense, where just like every enemy, they're just like, how do we make this enemy harder? They hit you 45 fucking times in a row. And like, if you don't have stamina, you're fucking dead. Like, there's no way you're getting out of it. And even if you do, it's like you literally cannot block 90% of the enemies, or at least the ones that are meant to be hard, because they will just get you stuck in a hit loop. They'll hit you once, you'll run out of stamina. They'll hit you again, you'll run out of stamina. They'll hit you again. And they just keep hitting you, and I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? Should I just fucking sit here? Like, what? It basically just forces you to sit there and watch yourself slowly die. And it's so annoying. But other than that, I actually am really enjoying the game. I still find the visuals pretty... Just, I don't think it's necessarily up to snuff, if I'm being entirely honest. What I referred to it way back when I talked about it is that I think it's beautiful from far away, but up close it's kind of like gritty and ugly. Yeah. And I still believe that. It's still a little janky up close. I shouldn't say ugly, because I don't think it's ugly. I think it's decent up close. But ultimately, I think the game is a lot of fun. I'm actually enjoying it a lot more now than I did when I initially played. I'm kind of like, I've gotten past the boss that I was stuck on, who was killing me because of a hit loop when I initially played. And it was really pissing me off. But I got past that boss, and I'm exploring areas that I didn't expect to have like checked out before. I'm like finding new enemies. I found out that there are like illusory walls in this game too. They're like hidden pathways that I never would have found before, like having really experienced these things in like Dark Souls. So I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a lot of fun. I don't necessarily know if I'll put enough time into it to beat it, but currently, from what I've played, I think it's super fun. One of my other big issues is that typically, like, and I mean, I might be wrong about this, but in my experience with the Souls-like genre, you don't often, with the exception of like a few games, you generally get a pretty decent amount of like variation when it comes to like your choice in combat. So it's like, oh, okay, cool, you can choose a different build. You can go with heavy weapons, you can go with light weapons, you can go like at the ranged build, you can try out a myriad of different things. But this, I have gotten like probably, I want to say close to 20 items, and like 2 of them are similar to my gameplay style. And it just doesn't make any sense to me, where it's like, okay, I've got 14 items that require me to have a shitload of strength. And it's like, do you just want me to make a strength build game? Like, why is there so little dexterity fucking weapons? Like, it's ridiculous. And I'm not even joking, like, every item I pick up, I'm just like, sweet, that looks like something I could, nope, I can't, sorry, like, it's not. Rough. And even when I get something that's like slightly better for me and better for my build, even though I think it looks dumb, I look at it and I'm like, this actually doesn't help me really in any way. Like, I can't realistically see how this would help a build at all. It's just worse than what I have. It's like, oh, it's a little bit lighter, but I have yet to actually notice any big advantage to not having a lot, like not being well, I guess like I'm not over encumbered, but having like lightweighted gear and like a really low kind of like weight versus having a high amount, I've yet to really notice a difference. Whereas one of the things I love and that I have so far written into my Shattered like impressions is that the Souls games, they do being over encumbered or overweight very interesting, where they make it really feel like you weigh a little bit too much, versus like Bethesda makes you walk really slow and it's just fucking annoying. It's just kind of like it's a deterrent to that, versus Souls like games, they're just like, or the actual Souls series, and I believe Bloodborne to some extent, or in a small way, has a very similar thing where instead you really feel that you're overweight. They make your roll really slow and you like turtle, but your standard movement is not that much slower. And I think that's really awesome, and obviously it consumes more stamina. I like the way they do it versus like I have yet to get to a point in Hellpoint where I'm just like, I feel chonky. Like I feel like a chonky boy. So I don't understand what they're trying to make me do here. And the HUD still makes no fucking sense, by the way. I still have no idea. It's something I talked about when I first played, and I was just like I've heard people say that the HUD is really interesting looking. It's interesting, but I still don't know what the fuck it means. Like, sometimes it glows, other times it doesn't, and I'm just like, I must be on a roll because it's glowing, but I still don't know why. Like, I don't get it. And it took me so long, like, there is a staple to this genre where they try to tell you the least amount possible, and you're supposed to learn over time, but there are some things I feel like they need to tell you. So in Hellpoint, you do not actually regain your, like, so what would be the equivalent of, like, Estus flasks? You don't regain them by going to breaches, which would be the equivalent of a bonfire. Instead, you do so by killing and battling enemies. And I did not notice that until, like, way later. After, like, multiple bosses, I'm sitting there fighting, and I was just like, why don't these come back? I was like, what the fuck? But it's actually, in my opinion, I think it's it's an easier way to do this, because as long as you're like stuck in this combat loop, as long as you are hitting enemies and for the most part not getting hit, you kind of like develop a large like hit combo in a sense, but you don't literally have to do that. You actually regain these fairly quickly. So instead of like having these instances where in Dark Souls I would get like halfway through a dungeon, or in Ashen I'd get halfway through a dungeon and not have any of my gourd or Estus flasks, and I'm kind of fucked. In this, it's just like I almost constantly have them, and I think it's really awesome. It's like an interesting way to make the game a bit easier without actually making it easier, because the fact that you don't get them when returning to a breach does kind of suck, but it's just like I can just run around and kill like 2 enemies and get them. So it's like, it's not a big deal. And there's a constant flow of health. So it's like, even if I'm midway through fighting a really hard enemy, if I hit them a couple times, I will more than likely get one of my health back. So I just like pop it in. I'm all good. So I'm enjoying it. I think Hellpoint's a lot of fun. I'm hoping that I find more equipment that suits my playstyle soon. It's a similar issue that I had with Chronos before the Ashes, is that there were like 2 weapons in the entire game that scaled on agility versus like 6 that scaled on strength. And I was like, why? Yeah. What are you doing? Like, why are you obviously trying to like push me into this fucking build?
You gotta start just playing strength builds.
I know. Apparently I do. Like, it's really fucking stupid. So I don't really get it, but yeah, I'm excited to play more Hellpoint. I actually, like, after sitting down a couple times, I found myself being just like, dude, I want to play more Hellpoint. It's entirely different than my first playthrough that I was doing, where I was just like, you know what, I would rather play like something else. I would rather like sink my teeth into like fucking Dragon Age Origins or something. I wasn't feeling it. Right now, I'm on a Souls-like kick, and this is kind of getting me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I enjoyed Shattered. I'm going to be honest. Like, I haven't beaten Shattered, but I believe the gameplay loop in Hellpoint feels a lot better than it does in Shattered. Tale of the Forgotten King. So,
that's good.
Please check it out. If you're a fan of Souls-likes, check it out. Hellpoint. I think it's like $40, which people might say is like a steep amount. It's like 30 or $40. It might say it's a steep amount for like what would be considered an indie game, but I would honestly say it's really good. So maybe wait for a sale if you're not 100% sold and you don't like really like Souls-likes. Wait for a sale. But if you're a big fan and you're like really chomping at the bit for something, you're about to play fucking Sekiro again because you just got like the rumors for Elden Ring, just fucking pick up Hellpoint, dude. Shit's good. Shit's fun. The other thing I'm going to talk about real quick is just going back to like Jacob McCourt's thing where he was watching Normal People, and he's like, I mean, it does say playing, watching, or doing in our doc. Me, something that I did this week while I was at work, I like, because NoClip did their whole like video on how things are changing in 2021 thing, I was just like, holy shit, there's so much NoClip content that I realize I've like not checked out. Like I typically like binge, and not necessarily purge, but I binge a lot of NoClip content. So I like watch every, like my entire backlog of NoClip shit and then just not watch for months and then watch a shitload again. Yeah. And while I've been at work, I have been watching, specifically the one I want to talk about is I watched the Mobius digital doc. It's about the development of the Outer Wilds. Holy shit. 100% recommend this doc. It's one, I mean, NoClip makes fucking amazing content just in general. It's so fucking awesome. If you're a fan of like docs in general, obviously I mean documentaries, not documents. But
I love
if you're
Google
a fan,
Docs. So good.
I'm a big fan of Google Docs. If you're a fan of documentaries in general, especially about video games or specifically indie games, 100% recommend NoClip series on like, they've got like a really awesome series about the development of like Hades. I really loved the one they did about Transistor. I thought that was awesome, and I'm actually going to talk about it when we talk about one of our news stories today. But Mobius Digital, there's so much going on in that game that I had no fucking idea how it exactly works. Like, basically the way that they developed this game and their design philosophy for the Outer Wilds is that they didn't want to fake anything and make anything seem like it was doing something that it wasn't always doing. So from what I understand, when you are on one planet, typically what would happen in a video game is to try to like make it a little bit more seamless and make it run better, from what I understand, this is like my very rudimentary, like very basic level understanding of how video games are developed. They essentially like process what you're doing currently, the place that you're in currently, and everything else kind of like fades away. It's not always existing, versus in the Outer Wilds, it basically is. Everything is always happening. And I found that to be so awesome and so interesting, where they were just like, yeah, typically in a video game, if you left your ship somewhere and you went away, your ship would like not really exist anymore. None of the like equations for weight or anything we would still actually like hamper your system with. But with Outer Wilds, it does so, where they're just like, if something is weighing down your ship, it has to be doing so while you walk away. So that's why like your ship will be taken up by tornadoes. Like you can lose your ship. And one of the most interesting things about the doc is that they wanted to do an achievement that basically broke your game. And it was like, if you had your probe on one planet, you on one planet, and your ship on another planet, and if you did so, it would basically break the game. And you would have to like hard boot your system. Oh and God. I thought that was so funny. They're just like, yeah, Annapurna was not a fan. They did not think it was a good idea.
I'm not surprised.
To encourage people to crash your game. And I just loved this doc so much. I thought it was so awesome. So if you're a fan of just video game documentaries in general, or you want to know more about the development of video games, check out the Mobius Digital, specifically Outer Wilds doc. So awesome. It's very, very cool. And I also had no idea that one of the large benefactors and like the co-founder of Mobius Digital is the guy who plays Hero in Heroes. That fucking blew my mind. I was like, what? Have you ever watched Heroes? Did you watch Heroes?
No. Yeah, so I don't know. But I mean, it's weird. It's one of those like small world things. I always think it's interesting when you have people who jump from like different, I don't want to say like industries, but like certain fields where you're like, what the fuck are you doing over there? Like,
yeah, it's like when you notice in the credits of iZombie that Rob Thomas was actually a producer on iZombie, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
The guy from like Matchbox 20? Like he actually is in the show and he did the main theme, but I didn't even think about it until I like noticed it one day where I was like, what?
Nope.
What the fuck is Rob Thomas doing in here? Yeah, it's weird. 100% weird. So that is what we've been playing and or watching. Let's hop into our main news stories. Our first of today is over on IGN. It is written by Adam Bankhurst, and it is Epic Games has acquired Fall Guys developer Mediatonic. Epic Games has officially acquired Tonic Games Group, the development company behind Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout. Epic shared the news while also confirming your gameplay isn't changing and Epic will continue to invest in making the game a great experience for players across platforms. I think the across platforms was necessary, but I think the like gameplay isn't changing thing is a bit weird. Where I was just like, who was thinking that you're gonna change it? Like I don't know who's just like,
all
oh,
right,
Epic
you know
bottom.
Fall Guys, first person shooter now. That's it.
They actually, like, I guess they own Fortnite, so people are actually thinking that it's going to be a real battle royale now, and you're just like,
what?
No.
No.
Furthermore, Epic said, your favorite colorful beans will still stumble through chaos on PC, PlayStation, and soon Nintendo Switch and Xbox. Mediatonic also announced the news with an FAQ that is set to answer some of the biggest questions regarding the future of Fall Guys, alongside revealing that Fall Guys' team has already grown from 35 to 150 people. Mediatonic promises that your gameplay isn't changing and that this acquisition will help them bring a ton of features already seen in Fortnite and Rocket League, other games that are owned by Epic. These features include account systems, crossplay, squad versus squad modes, and more. While Mediatonic mentioned Fall Guys will continue to remain on Steam, it had nothing more to announce regarding a possible move to a free-to-play model. As to why Mediatonic chose Epic, the developers said they've been mutual friends for a while and that the team has a lot in common and share a lot of game goals. It's no secret that Epic is invested in building the metaverse, and Tonic Games shares this goal. As Epic works to build this virtual future, we need great creative talent who know how to build powerful games, content, and experiences, Epic Games founder and CEO Tim Sweeney said. Okay, I don't know why they just pulled out this, like, mediaverse thing, like, metaverse thing, and acted like everyone should know what that is, because I'm going to be honest, I've never heard anybody fucking say that before. Literally never. What the fuck does that mean? Like,
I don't know.
I have no idea. But how do you feel about this, Big Josh Boy, that Epic is once again gobbling up another, like, they bought...
Epic's got money, bro.
yeah, they bought the developers of Rocket League, and so they like own Rocket League for the most part, and now they're also purchasing Mediatonic. Now they own Fall Guys. Like it is, yeah. Epic's got some cash. They got some cashish.
They're becoming a monopoly of games, which maybe they'll buy Monopoly one day. Who knows? I don't have strong opinions because I don't really care too much about Fall Guys. I think it's a cool concept, but I never got into the hype of it. I never played it. I think it's interesting, the free-to-play model, because like if it does turn to that, like I'll try it. But I mean, I just think it's weird in regards to like Epic needs to chill. Like, stop.
Yeah,
it's too much, man. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it also seems like this is actually the way that this is phrased, that Mediatonic chose Epic, means
Right.
that like multiple people seemingly approach Mediatonic to
Yeah.
acquire
And
them.
I'm sure they did. Like, come
Oh
on, it's
yeah.
such a hot commodity. Like, there's no way that people weren't just like jumping at being the next one in line to own that. Like, and it's great for Mediatonic because it is that moment of being able to be like, we were successful enough where big companies actually want our own, IP. They want everything about us to bring in our company. It's great that they'll have more money to, create whatever it is that Fall Guys becomes, that season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever they have. It's awesome for them. But at the same time, we'll never talk about it again because it's not an indie game on this show. And I think it's weird that Epic is buying so much. But yeah, it's not like they just, I don't want to paint them as the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say like, oh, Epic is terrible. It's not that I'm saying that. I'm just saying like, I don't know that I want so many companies to own all of the IPs for everything.
Yeah, the nice thing about like indie game development is always the autonomy, the ability to make exactly what you want. And there's always like anytime a purchase or acquisition happens by another company, you're just like, will they be able to do what they want? To be
Right.
fair, I mean, Fall Guys is a little bit different because it's very gameplay heavy, and I feel like the Epic acquisition can only actually help them.
Yeah.
In a sense, like, I don't think anything will actually be hindered by this because it's not going to be like Epic's like, nah, too many fans. There's too many in
And
this level.
And I enjoy the fact that they took the very much like the Xbox approach or the Microsoft approach of when they buy into these already existing IPs or these, in progress IPs, they're still allowing those other platforms to still have it. Like the fact that it's still on Steam, I think this would have been a much different story if Epic bought them and we're like, no more Steam. And just like ripped it from their store, like this would have been an outrage kind of a thing. But like, it's still a weird story.
One thing I'm really interested in is how moving forward their content updates happen. Like, I'm wondering if maybe the seasons come to like the Epic Game Store first over Steam or whatever, or maybe they don't really take this rivalry like that seriously for the most part. Because they haven't been purchasing exclusives as often as they were like within the past couple years.
Right.
They really haven't like gone on about this like fisticuffs, you need to lower your revenue share thing for a while. Like, they haven't really been on that soapbox in a while, or at least Tim Sweeney hasn't. So it's kind of weird. Plus, I'm fairly certain, like, the Fortnite updates and Rocket League updates aren't, like, they haven't slowed or they haven't come later to other platforms as far as I know. So
I don't think you can get
anything's
away
gonna
with
change.
something like that because it feels very, I don't know, it would feel really icky in that regards.
Yeah.
But I don't think so. Like, I don't know enough to say one way or the other, but I've never seen anything that would suggest that. And I think it would be almost in their, like, it wouldn't be in their favor to do something like that because they're just keeping money from themselves if they do that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Being on all platforms actually helps them. And like
Right.
being able to, like, one thing I'm really excited for in this instance is like the ability to implement crossplay. I think is awesome. Like, I don't believe that you can actually do crossplay on Fall Guys currently. I think that's one of the things that they were talking about. Those features included account systems crossplay and squad versus squad modes. So I think like one of the coolest things about Epic purchasing them is that they seemingly already have this pipeline available with things like, I believe, like Rocket League has crossplay, and I know Fortnite does, that they already have the accessibility and these pipelines of information on how to do that. So I think we're actually fairly quickly see Fall Guys get some sort of crossplay. At least if I was at Epic, that would be like my first priority, is getting crossplay underway between all the different systems, and then like working on how we implement things like the account system and stuff. But it's also very possible that they have to implement the account system before they do crossplay to make it a little bit easier, so you can play your character on whatever like system you move to. Very similar to Fortnite, because they have like the Epic accounts and stuff like that. So
yeah. There's,
I'm not exactly sure.
there's a lot of work that goes into it, even though from a UI perspective or from like a front end perspective of us looking at it, it seems super easy. You're like, why can't you just make my account go from here to there? And it's like, it doesn't work that way. You know, there's a lot of.
I mean, to be fair, Epic was ballsy enough when PlayStation said that it just wasn't realistically like feasible to do crossplay, and they just turned it on.
Yeah.
Once they were just like, "Oops, sorry, we did it," and it was like just the fucking sack on these peeps is crazy. Right. Like Epic seems to be willing to fuck with anybody because they got the Fortnite money. So
I mean, yeah, they're at a big enough place where they can start a whole war against Apple because of what they're doing. Like
that's a good point.
They're such a large company and they have such a stranglehold on the just market as far as so wide of a player base. Like it is insane that there are still people who are playing that just constantly. But that's just, it's a popular game.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. But speaking of insanity, let's talk about our next news story. This one is over on Polygon. It is written by Owen S. Good, and it is Shovel Knight's latest crossover, Arby's. Okay, dude.
So this is, I remember this vaguely. You dunk on Arby's all the time, but you've never been, right?
Yeah, I've never gone to Arby's. Yeah, never been to Arby's. I almost went to Arby's because they had like the Cuphead toys and stuff. Like I almost did that. But here's the thing. I have a serious question. What the fuck is up with Arby's? Why are all these indie games fucking going with Arby's? What? Is it just easier than Burger King or something? It's probably a lot
easier, and that's why.
I guess that would make a lot of sense, because it's like, who the fuck eats at Arby's? But, like, I don't get it, dude. This is like, it's so weird. And, of course, like, I gotta be honest. When I first read this news story, I totally thought... Okay, so let me get into it first, and then I'll tell you what I thought.
All right.
So Arby's Kids Meals will come with a launcher token that includes a code for some DLC in Shovel Knight Treasure Trove on the Nintendo Switch and Windows PC via Steam. Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is... Okay, everybody knows what Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is. They've had like a bunch of recent crossovers. They've had like ridiculous crossovers. They came to Fortnite. They're like in Indiegogo. Like Shovel Knight's been everywhere, and they already talk about it in the article that it's been in a dozen different locations. So big thing here is that you get a token launcher. You can get one with Shovel Knight, one for Shield Knight, one for Spectre Knight, Plague Knight, which actually they had to rename Dr. Knight, which I think is hilarious. Just because it seems to be like they bring up in the article that it might be like a COVID thing, but also you don't want to bring up plagues when it comes to like a kid's meal.
Yeah, so it's kind of true.
I get it. And then we have the Enchantress, the Black Knight, and King Knight. Each one has their own little disc launchers, I think is really cool. But initially when I read this, I thought they were just getting the DLC, and I thought that was so funny because it was like some fucking kid gets a kid's meal at Arby's and they just get a DLC code for a game they don't own. I thought that would have been so fucking funny, but it turns out they do get these like weird little disc launchers, which, I mean, you got to appreciate them. They're pretty cool. I remember when I had one for my Bionicle. It was pretty dope. So I'm a fan. But I think it's awesome that like video games are coming to a point, and like certain indie IP, like I said, like Cuphead and now Shovel Knight, are getting these actual like recognition from big name brands when it comes to fast food. Like typically when you think fast food toys, you think like, oh, when a Marvel movie comes out, they have like fucking Avengers toys, or like when any like big piece of media comes out, they have the toys. And now we're getting like indie game toys, which is very, very cool. I'm super into it. I love it. We haven't really had like video or like really awesome video game toys since like Burger King did the really cool like medallion Pokemon things where you could get dope. Yeah, like the gold Pokemon cards and the Pokeballs. Like those things were so fucking cool. That was Burger King, right?
It was Burger King.
Am I wrong?
Yeah,
okay, that's what I thought. King. I never got any, which kind of sucked. Because, like, I'm not a big fan of Burger King, but I really wanted those. I had, like, a friend who had the entire collection. God, that shit was awesome. His parents probably spent so much money on Burger King.
Yeah, I think I did have, maybe not the full, but I had a lot of them. I don't know where those fucking things went, though.
Yeah, your dad's thinking he could sell them on eBay?
that
He's got him like in his garage. He's
Pokey
chilling
money.
there with a bunch of Beanie Babies and shit. He's I'm
yeah.
gonna make me some money one of these days.
Yeah.
But I think it's super cool. I think the ability to unlock like these different codes, seemingly they do a bunch of different stuff. Like you can get sprites and each one changes, but I'm not exactly sure.
That was the thing that pissed me off with this. I was like, this is such a cool idea. It's crazy that an indie game is getting to actually like promote their own stuff. Like, what a world to live in. And then you're like, okay, well, cool. So what is that DLC? And they're like, we're not exactly sure what it does. 5 characters will get some sort of cosmetic, either a weapon or a skin. And you're like, what? Like, what am I buying these things for? Like, I don't even know. Yeah. I don't want this disc launcher. I want to know what this DLC is.
No, that is a good point. Yeah. And you also kind of have to wonder, like, does your, like, DLC correspond with the disc launcher you got? So, like, if you get a Shovel Knight disc launcher, is it only the Shovel Knight DLC? And, like, you don't get the, like, cool shit for Plague Knight? You don't get the cool shit for any of the other knights? Like, that would be so funny, honestly. Yeah. If they took the collection of, like, these toys to a whole new level where they're like, you also can collect the DLC. I think that would be so funny. I doubt they do it because that would be such a fucking pain. But
yeah, see what
I think this is cool.
I think it's cool. I think it's horribly marketed in the way of like what you're gonna get. Like, I think it's interesting that they're like a unique. Like each character unlocks a surprise game code is their thing. What does that mean? You can't say just a little more description on what my child is getting from this, or myself. I guess it doesn't have to be a kid who gets this, but it is a kid's meal. But like, I just don't understand. At first, I thought what it meant when it said like it gives you some of the DLC. I thought it was like you have to collect them all and then you get a DLC of Treasure Trove, like the official DLC for the game.
Each
and I was
one
like,
has like a number
that's
on it.
weird. Yeah, like part of the code, and then you have to like figure it out and be like, oh,
that
it's
would be
this one.
so awesome if it was like a puzzle on top of getting all of them. You have to find out in which order the code goes.
Yeah, and it's just like an unlimited code, but that wouldn't work because then people would take advantage of that. I don't know, man.
That's
it
fair.
just I just think it's not a good end result for
yeah.
It's
definitely like, I feel like it's weird. At least the way that this is marketed is really odd, because I would like, if I like you, if I was given any actual concrete like definition as to what I would get, it's possible that I would go to Arby's, or like I'd be like, hey, one of my friends, if you're going to Arby's and getting a kid's meal already, give me your fucking toy, kind of a deal. Because I'm not trying to eat a roast beef sandwich. Like, who the fuck goes to fast food to get a roast beef sandwich?
That is a weird one. I don't know. They've got a pretty good chicken sandwich though. But I'm not.
Wait, they have
not
chicken sandwiches? They got chicken tenders? Shit.
They got chicken tenders. Yeah, their fries are. I
might go to Arby's, dude.
Their jalapeno poppers.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. Maybe I gotta go to Arby's. I'll be like, can I get some fucking chicken nuggets? Like, how much a fucking kids meal here? But I think it's cool.
Can I get the Treasure Trove DLC toys, please?
Dude, I want so badly to just be like, go up to their drive-thru window and be like, hey, can you explain this Shovel Knight toy to me thing? Like, how does this DLC work? Like, what exactly am I getting? And they're just like, sir, this is an Arby's. And I'm like, I know. That's why I'm asking you. Like, what kind of DLC do I get for Treasure Trove? And they're like, how the fuck would I know? Like, I would love some 17-year-old kid to be bitched out by, like, a 25-year-old or 40-year-old man. Because he's like, what do I get with my Treasure Trove code? And he's just like, I don't know.
He's like, they don't tell us.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. It's just like when like fucking parents would bitch out fast food employees because they couldn't give their kid a certain toy.
That specific toy, yeah.
Yeah. I feel so bad for them when that shit happens, because it's just like, aren't you the one teaching your kid you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, but like you're the one throwing a fit right now because they didn't get the toy they wanted? It's weird. I guess it's also like parents are like, I don't want to fucking hear about it. So just give him the fucking toy.
For sure. They're just like, shut my child up. Please give him the toy that he wants. I don't want to buy 7 Happy Meals so I can get this.
Yeah, definitely. Our next news story is over on GameSpot. It's written by Haley Williams. And this one's a weird one. This early Bugsnax idea sure is alarming. So I'm not going to read much of this, mostly just because the main, the main crux of the article is that Bugsnax used to be a bit different before.
It's a nightmare, dude.
Yeah, before it became what it is now. In essence, Bugsnax now is a little bit creepy. The fact that, you'd eat a strawberry and your hand becomes a strawberry, it's a little creepy just to begin with. They say it's very it's it's mild undercurrent of body horror is the way that they say it. Undercurrent of body horror. And I totally get it. But the earlier concepts of Bugsnax by the developer Young Horses was so much weirder. They released an early build, early footage of what it was, and essentially you caught these Bugsnax and then you dismembered them to get food and feed it to your friends. So they would catch these olive flies and then tear off their wings.
Rip it.
Yeah, just rip off their wings and pull out their olive tongue and serve it to their friend. And then they had these weird squid pickle jars that they would then get and just tear the pickles off one by one. It is really creepy, admittedly. The one thing I find odd about it is that they're they say it's not surprising that developers decided to can this mechanic, as reviewers would have been less likely to recommend the game for kids with dismemberment as a core part of the gameplay. And it's just I mean, do you think kids would understand though? I don't think they would.
They would just be pulling the pickles.
They'd just be do. Yeah, they'd be I'm picking a pickle. It's not that weird. They'd be totally fine with it. Yeah. And then it's just when in Road to El Dorado, when you watched it as a kid and you were just oh, they're kissing. That's totally fine. And then later you find out she's definitely giving him a beach.
Blowing him.
It's totally... that's the difference. It's I would still recommend people watch Road to El Dorado. I'm not going to tell them that they shouldn't watch it because they're adult themes. It doesn't make any sense kind of a deal. I think I think that this game would have been a lot more boring, to be honest. I haven't played Bugsnax, but the gameplay I've seen is different and more interesting. But this early concept is definitely creepy.
Yeah, it's so weird. And I think the interesting part about it is, if you take nothing away from this, is how unpolished games are when you first start and how interesting it is. For someone who's building a game and is just starting off and who is an indie dev who is getting into this and might feel kind of discouraged that, that first prototype doesn't look 100%. This is what Bugsnax started with, right? This does not look good. No offense to them, but this is very, early stages. And that's fine. It can become something amazing. But also this is mad weird. Very creepy to just be ripping these guys apart. It is something else. That is for sure.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say about it, so let's move on. Speaking of early concepts, we're hopping into our last news story for today. This one's over on The Gamer, written by Vlad Mazenko. I hope we said your name at least somewhat correctly. Hades originally featured Theseus as a protagonist to escape the labyrinth. Supergiant Games revealed the early concept for their roguelike action game, Hades, which received plenty of Game of the Year awards in the early stages of development. The game was called Minos, and each playthrough would be a free retelling of the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. Greek mythology roots were always the basis of Hades, though the concept has undergone many changes before shaping together in Supergiant's magnum opus. The roguelike action RPG focuses on Zagreus, who attempts to escape the underworld of his father Hades. The project received overwhelmingly positive. Okay, yeah, we all know this stuff. So Supergiant co-founder Amir Roa has shared an interesting backstory for Hades, The Verge reported. In the beginning, the team at Supergiant decided to go with the concept of Theseus as a protagonist who is trying to escape the ever-changing labyrinth. The game was called Minos at the early stages of development, and some concepts of Theseus's design interactions were presented. As the concept may sound like a win for a roguelike game, the team never managed to crack the idea and make something really interesting out of it. While the team was speculating about what the game would be, Theseus was a curious option, but as soon as the developers started to shape him as the protagonist, he got very common. Theseus himself didn't seem to be a very interesting character, and because of him, the game seemed too gloomy and too tiresome. And when they added some fresh character traits and details, he just doesn't really feel like Theseus anymore. Creative director Greg Kazavin suggested changing the main character of the game completely, and that is when Zagreus appeared. The developers quickly found out in ancient Greek mythology there are not many stories dedicated specifically to Hades and his underworld, leaving a lot of space for interpretation, although immediately his pitch was approved. Almost immediately, his pitch was approved by almost everyone in Supergiant Games, and somehow it all came together by itself. Since then, Hades' development went a lot faster than before, and of course, we all know how it ended. We got Theseus and the Minotaur as a boss fight in Hades, but of course, our main character changed to Zagreus. He is the son of Hades and, I want to say Persephone? I want to say her name is, but I'm not 100% sure because I haven't beat the game 7 times. So, whatever.
So are you upset because if this would have happened, you never would have stopped playing Hades?
Yeah, initially when I thought about it, I was just like, so he wouldn't have been a fucking boss?
He wouldn't have been a boss that stopped you from playing the game.
Yeah. I was initially a little bit peeved about the fact that I wouldn't have had to fight him. But I think this is a really, once again, just an awesome peek behind the curtain as to how development works, is that a lot of their early stuff for Hades was entirely different, just like Bugsnax. They were just the early concept was we had fucking Theseus trying to escape this ever-changing labyrinth, and now it moves to Zagreus trying to escape these different environments in hell, or in the underworld. It's so awesome. I love the differences in how games are actually created. Right. I just think it's really awesome. Do you think in a world where this was still Theseus in the ever-changing labyrinth, do you think that people would have enjoyed it as much?
I think so. I think to be honest, Zagreus was never the main point for me. That was the selling point. I was always very much more for the gameplay. But I enjoyed the story, but I wouldn't say Zagreus per se was the person that for me held everything together. I think a lot of the characters and learning about them and learning their backgrounds was all very interesting and could have tied it together. I definitely think it wouldn't have had the same selling point just because I think Theseus is just a boring character in general. I don't like him. And maybe it would have been different because he wouldn't have been portrayed in the same light, right? But anytime you got to the point where you fought Theseus, you were just every time I was like, all right, just shut up, let me fight you. I have no interest in your character. All you do is the same thing. You're like,
he is kind of a
high and mighty character, I will stop you. And you're like, great,
yeah,
I got it. You never have to talk. It's all the same thing that comes out of your mouth. So if it was that in a game form and that was me all the time, I'd be like, I don't want to be this person. But I don't think I would have been, right? I don't think that's the character that they would have played off. And that's probably why they were having such trouble with it, is because they started adding those different personality traits to make him different, but then he felt different, right? And so it just wasn't
then
the
he
same.
was no longer Theseus. To be fair, the legend of Theseus, as I'm brushing up on it right now, it doesn't seem especially... It doesn't seem very grounded in Theseus's story. It's much more about this, if you didn't know, so the entire idea of the, Minotaur being with Theseus in, I can't remember what that place is called, in that area, but the Minotaur that's with him is the, legends behind it are that this queen has sex with a bull that was sent from Zeus because Zeus just had a fucking issue with the king, and the king Minos was so embarrassed that he actually locked this bull away in a labyrinth, but to keep the bowl like satiated, he had to like sacrifice people to it. He had to sacrifice humans to it. So eventually, different, like basically kind of like a very like Children of Morta, like the Bergsons, like this family decides that they are going to kill the Minotaur to end the human sacrifices. So Theseus is one of the like sons of, I think his name is Aegeus, decides to be one. Yeah, he essentially like Theseus is like one of his sons and goes in and fights the Minotaur. And I believe Theseus announced to King Minos that he was going to kill the monster. I believe he, in the end, actually kills it. But just think about how the story would have been so much different if this was about Theseus and an ever-changing labyrinth that, like, that does fit with the roguelike gameplay. For sure. But when it comes to the overall storyline, I find Zagreus' story much more interesting. Like, it's not that it so hangs on the character of Zagreus, but and I mean to the point that they're making, where it was like it opens so many other options with storytelling, is that they're pretty hampered by what exactly like Theseus' story was, because they have the like rough building blocks of Greek mythology that they would have to kind of like pander to. Right. Versus Zagreus, they were just like, we could make the story we wanted to. And Theseus' story would have just been boring. It would have just been like, he's fucking going to kill a Minotaur. Like, it wouldn't have been that interesting. And I don't think that people would have played it as many times. They wouldn't have played the like 7 playthroughs to actually get the full story of Hades. So I think it's pretty awesome. I'm really interested. I mean, a similar thing to this is watching the NoClip documentary on Transistor. I had no idea that Red actually wasn't the main character of Transistor initially. It was actually the opposite, whereas like Red was actually the one who was dead, not her boyfriend. And it's actually like flipped in the actual game, where Red is the like singer and she has the sword, the Transistor, that houses the soul of her like dead lover. Versus original concepts were like a boxer type character whose girlfriend was a singer and she died, and like all sorts of stuff. And like they just flipped it, and then the game entirely began to like really flesh out around it. Very similar to this, where it's like all they did was change the main character. And then the game actually started to pick up speed. And I think that's really, really interesting. Game development is so awesome. It's just such a weird way to construct worlds, that they're just like, yeah, we just changed everything and it fell into place.
and then it was the way it was supposed to be all along.
Yeah. Plus you have to like mix in gameplay and everything. But I think it's really awesome.
Whatever.
I think it's very, very cool. But we have sucked these news stories dry, so it's time for us to hop into news. Cram!
Don't like that. I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not about that. I'm not about sucking it dry and then going straight into cramming. It's a bit much, don't you think?
News Cram is our weekly wrap-up segment where we, the hosts of IndiePod and Indie Games Podcast, cram you full of all sorts of indie games news. This week, we do have a couple quick news stories for you. No new deals and quick steals, but we do have a bunch of new stuff. So, our first quick news story for today comes by way of Nintendo Life, where it's reported that Metroidvania Blasphemous by The Game Kitchen just hit a massive sales milestone of 1 million copies sold, and that adventure game Minute of Islands by Studio Fizbin has been delayed indefinitely due to major technical issues. Damn. Now, over on GameSpot, where it's reported that the Wholesome Direct will return in 2021 and is currently looking for games to feature. So if you're an indie dev and want your game shown in the next Wholesome Direct, be sure to reach out by March 15th. Now over on The Gamer, where it's reported that roguelike strategy game Loop Hero by 4 quarters has sold over 150,000 copies within the first 24 hours. Damn. That tactical roguelite Crying Suns by Alt-Shift has sold over 1 million copies across both Android and PC. And lastly, I accidentally wrote lately, but it's actually supposed to be lastly.
Lately.
And lastly, that indie developer True Fun Entertainment has promised to donate all of the proceeds garnered from the sale of Super Rad Raygun during the month of March to Can Do MS. That's specifically a charity that focuses on multiple sclerosis, which is a degenerative disease, which I think is really awesome. My dad's best friend, who we pretty much call our uncle, we just call him Uncle Tony, but he's not actually our uncle. You know, it's that kind of a friend. But he actually has MS, so it's a little, I guess it's kind of close to home in a deal, but I think it's awesome. All these devs just giving money away to charity. It's fantastic. Now on to some new stuff. Our first 5 items in new stuff come by way of Nintendo Life, where it's reported that Miriam from Bloodstained Ritual of the Night will soon be featured in 3D fighting game Mighty Fight Federation sometime this spring, that Imposter Simulator Gnosia by Petite Depot is now available on the Nintendo Switch, that racing game Can't Drive This by Pixel Maniacs is releasing in 1.0 on both PC via Steam and the Nintendo Switch on March 19th, that Binding of Isaac's upcoming Repentance DLC will be headed to the PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch sometime in Q3 2021. And lastly, that action-adventure game Stonefly by Flight School Studio is headed to the Nintendo Switch, PC via both Steam and the Epic Game Store, both PlayStations 4 and 5, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, and the Xbox One sometime this summer. And I believe the Flight School Studio is actually the developer behind Creature in the Well. I believe that's the big crux of that news story, is that they got a new game. Plus, you can fly mechs that look like beetles, and I'm really into it. I think it's awesome. It looks really cool. And now over to our Discord/email, which of course, send us some emails at indieincursionpodcast@gmail.com. We have... So Captain reached out to me and was just like, hey, yo, like, little did you know, Captain is actually, I believe, a social media manager for the Quantum Lion Labs, and was like, hey, we have our Steam page for our upcoming game. And I was like, oh shit, I'll make sure I put it in the we'll talk about it on the podcast. That was supposed to be last week. I forgot about it. So we're doing it this week.
Fucking fun.
Over in Discord, where it's reported that cooperative VR assassination game Kill the King by Quantum Lion Labs is headed to PC via Steam sometime this summer. Now over to Polygon, where it's reported that narrative card game Signs of the Sojourner by Echo Dog Games is headed to the PlayStation 4 on March 17th, Nintendo Switch on March 18th, and the Xbox One on March 19th.
Play that game, is good.
I'm actually interested to see if you'll go back and play more, because this release is also accompanied by a content update that will add 5 new characters to the game. So Josh, will you go back and play some more since you got 5 new characters?
I don't know, maybe. I don't think. Got some tongue action going on here. The listener is very confused. I don't think so. I mean, maybe, but like I'm just not usually a person who jumps back into games. It's just not who I am. But
yeah, other than Binding of Isaac.
I mean, well, come on, man. Roguelikes are different, though. Roguelikes you have to jump back into. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fair.
But it was a great game, and I recommend it very much.
All right. And that first-person narrative adventure game Before Your Eyes by Good World Games is headed to PC via Steam on April 8th. Now over on Twinfinite, where it is reported that VR MMO Zenith The Last City by Ramen VR is headed to PlayStation VR when it releases sometime this year. That shit looks cool. I'll buy a fucking VR. I'm not even joking. That shit looks dope. And that Ragdoll Physics Simulation game, Totally Reliable Delivery Service by Weir 5 Games is headed to Steam on April 1st. Now over on The Gamer, where it's reported that deck building roguelike The Legend of Bumbo by Edmund McMillan, James Interactive, and Ridiculon has just received its first DLC titled The Lost, which includes a new playable character, new tile system. A new tile type, and new bosses, of course, much more. There's a lot of stuff.
They classify that as a deck builder? That seems weird.
Yeah, at least the article did, and I believe I actually copied that directly from the Legend of Bumbo Steam page, but I'm not exactly sure.
I guess you could classify it as that, but I wouldn't. It feels like a stretch to me.
Okay, all right. Well, there you go. That Souls-like game, Ronin Samurai Redemption by G Devs, is headed to PC via Steam sometime soon. And lastly, that stealth action thriller, Wanhan, A Vengeful Spirit by Basan Sane Games, is headed to PC via Steam sometime in Q2 2021. And to round out the group over on GameSpot, it is reported that roguelite platformer Scourgebringer by Flying Oak Games and E Studio is headed to the PlayStation 4 and Vita, or PlayStations 4 and Vita on April 22nd. Dude, indie games are keeping the Vita alive.
It's fucking crazy. So weird.
It's awesome. I love it. I love it. So, Big Josh Boy, we've been blessed with so many amazing indie game news stories that it is about time we get back to the creators in God Bless the Crowd. This is where the biggest of average Josh Boys hops onto all sorts of crowdfunding sites, find something awesome for us to talk about, and we do just so. This week is a little bit different, actually, because the developer reached out to us on Twitter to ask us to check out their game. This is over, actually, on Indiegogo, which is a little bit different. Oof. Normally, if we go outside of Kickstarter, it's normally Fig, but this one, over on Indiegogo, this game is called Beckoned. It's a meticulously handcrafted epic adventure with a real-time twist to JRPG turn-based combat systems. This is by Zade Studios, LLC. They're in Orlando, United States. This is our first campaign, and currently they're looking for $68,000. They, at the time of this recording, have 8,151 with 58 backers and 23 days left to go, so they still need $60,000. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, crowdfunding is a little bit different. It's odd the way that it all works. But to get in on the ground floor and to actually get the game, it is $30 US, which gets you the game itself, and I believe possibly some other stuff, maybe just the game, I think, actually. I'm not exactly sure. But, Big Josh Boy, tell me what you think of Beckoned, because this actually seems like a game that you might like, being like a JRPG fan.
Yeah, so
or at least like turn-based fan.
Turn-based, yeah. Well, yeah. I'll say yes and no, because it plays into the turn-based systems that I don't like, which are very familiar to older school Final Fantasies, like you think of like 7 and 8, where it's turn-based, but it's like real-time. Mm-hmm. And so you have to, like, I don't know why it's very much the reason why Chrono Trigger, like, I like the game a lot and I wish I could be more into it, but because they have this real-time turn-based approach, it always just kind of like turns me off a bit. But it's kind of cool because what happens is your combat system is effectively a turn-based JRPG, like the way you would think of it, but the bar is your enemy's turn, and when they're attacking you, you have like a up, left, right input where your enemy will attack and it will show a brief indicator that like, oh, I'm gonna swing at this part. So you have to like quickly click to the right so that you put up your arm so that you're able to block, and like same with any of the different areas. And then it's likewise when you go to actually attack them, you have that same kind of like button strategy of like hitting them to the left, to the right, above them kind of a thing, and they can do the same thing. So I think it's interesting because it takes a very more intricate or, you know, complicated approach to trying to push combat to make it not just like press a button to attack and you attack, right? And I think that's cool. I think it adds that layer of an interesting, just different world that you would normally see from a JRPG, and that's what they're trying to go for, right? But I don't really enjoy that element. I feel weird because I like games that are fast paced and are like, let me just move around and attack people, whatever. I like turn-based games, but when you mix them, even though I'm generally a person who is of the mindset that mixing genres is a great idea, when you do it with these, I for some reason always hate it. I'm not as crazy about it. That being said, I haven't played the demo. I might be wrong. This could be a game for me, but initially when I look at this, I think it's a cool concept. I just don't think it'll stick with me. But there's a lot of people who probably will. I haven't looked too much into the story of it. I thought it was a story. I don't know. I read through some of it and I was like, okay, this isn't sticking with me. This is one of those games where like, and especially with JRPGs, I'm kind of the same, like, or just a lot of like heavy story based games. It's usually not the story that pulls me in. It's like, I enjoy the combat and then I get kind of a little bit ingrained into the story and then it hooks me. But I feel like with stories or, you know, bigger worlds, it's a little bit more that it takes for me to get invested into that. So I can't speak too much for that, but like I still think it's an interesting kind of game. I think there's definitely potential in it, and I think if it's something that you're interested in, like $30 isn't a crazy ask, but
yeah,
it's just yeah, it is what it is. That's my take.
Yeah. I personally find the combat system like really interesting. I like the kind of like direction based like blocking and attacking. I think that's really cool. Like I thought it was cool when they did it in For Honor, and I've liked it in other games where they've done it as well. I personally like, I'm not a big JRPG fan, but I do actually like a lot about this game. The art style reminds me a lot of like, did you ever watch the really old animated Hobbit movie?
Yeah,
that was really creepy. Like that's what this reminds me of when it's like the actual gameplay and everything reminds me so vaguely of that animation style, and I don't know why. It's just like in the back of my head the whole time. I'm just thinking of like fucking Bilbo just sitting there like just fucking dunking on Smeagol as he runs away with his ring kind of a thing. Like I think it looks really awesome. I like the design of a lot of these creatures. Of course, you got them dope ass slimes, big boy. You got the cool slimes, which I'm a fan of. And ultimately, though, when it comes down to the story itself, which is a big deal for me, this does seem very boilerplate JRPG, where it's about like a boy who's lost his memories and like a necklace that he believes is kind of entangled with his memories, and he's trying to find his necklace. Like it seems very boilerplate currently, but I imagine it's really going to start to flesh out. And this is also in a world that is like very fantasy oriented, so there are like these anthropomorphized like monkeys. That's kind of interesting. One thing that while listening to the trailer I wasn't that impressed with was the voice acting. I was like like, I mean, I totally understand it's one thing that you don't want to have to, like, you got to put your budget somewhere, and voice acting is one thing that, like, teams can do on their own, so they wouldn't have to pay, like, a voice actor. But to be entirely honest, I felt that it did not sound very good. I would have almost rather just had, like, plain text. While listening to it, because it very much seemed like the same person doing every voice, but just trying to like one of them, they did like a Dwarfesque character where they obviously just messed around with a couple of different filters in like what would be Adobe Audition, and to make it have like more of like a billowing, echoey voice. And I was like, but I can still hear your voice. Like, still hear the same person's voice underneath it. You can mess with it as much as you want, but it still sounds fairly similar.
Yeah, so, and I wonder if you know, that's something where they're just doing that for this, and then based on getting money, they, you know, hire individuals who want to give that more polished quality to it. So that's not off the table, right? This is once again one of those caveats of like, anytime you have a crowdfunded project, you are seeing it as of the current state, but that doesn't always equate to what it's going to be when you get it at the end, right?
Yeah, I hope. That was one thing that I was like, oh, if this game does get like funded and everything, which I really, really hope it does, because the game looks really interesting. But if it does get funded, I hope they put some of the money toward, like, if they're going to do voice acting, or at least on the small scale that they do, toward some voice actors. There are people, like, you don't have to get big names. You can pay, like, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, and I've like retweeted them. They've posted their reels on Twitter and stuff like that. Like, people who are early into the voice acting industry and just need like one, exposure, and two, they need practice. Like, you can get them in that way. Like, maybe they're not the greatest voice actors of all time, but you still have this vocal like variety where it doesn't sound like the same person with different filters. So like, I think that's one thing while looking at the game that I'm like, I would immediately change that. Yeah. Like, that was my one critique of this while looking at it, was like, I totally like the combat style. I like the art style. The story itself, I'm interested, like, I'm intrigued, and the world itself seems really interesting. But the one thing that I would change before anything else, obviously you got to build the game. That's one thing. Like, the thing I would change would be the voice acting.
Yeah.
Or
I do think the leveling system looks interesting. That crazy color wheel that they have.
Yeah.
I looked at that and I was
really
like
intricate.
oh, this is daunting. Like this is very much one of the things about big RPGs that always like scare me at first if it's something that hasn't been out for a while, where there's enough people who wrote a guide of like, these are the classes you should probably go for. Like otherwise, if you're just picking it up and you look at that, you're like,
yeah,
okay.
It seems really complicated. Like, honestly, looking at it, they've really gone full bore into the JRPG systems for this game. Like, it looks weird as fuck.
Yeah.
I'm doesn't
here,
look like it makes a lot of sense.
I'm here for it though. I think it's cool. But it's one of those things where I know that if I had just jumped into it right away, I would look at it and be like, this is gonna take a bit. I'm gonna have to sit here and think about this for a while.
Yeah, I totally get it. Any last thoughts you would like to talk about Beckoned before we hop into our listener questions?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I think if it sounded good, check it out. This is one of those things where I think the one thing I will talk about is Indiegogo. If you're nervous about that, just because it's a different site than we usually talk about. Indiegogo always makes me nervous because many of their projects are not fixed goal, where they have it set where no matter what amount they get, they'll keep the money. Mm-hmm. This game is not like that. This game is a fixed goal. If they don't meet that goal, they will not get any of that money. So if your concern is basically giving them the money and them not hitting it and then nothing coming out, so you don't want to back it, like rest assured that's not the case. This is only if they hit the 68,000 will they get any of that money.
That's okay. That's a great caveat to add, because I didn't exactly know what the fixed goal thing meant. Mm-hmm. I forgot that Indiegogo allowed you to like take the money if you like, even if you didn't hit your goal, kind of a deal, which I think is kind of interesting. But at the same point, I understand why people wouldn't do it. And typically, one thing that I should say is like, we don't go to Indiegogo a lot, mostly because the website just isn't designed very well.
Yeah, like, I don't like it.
Moving around it, I don't really, I also don't really like it, and it's just like, it's kind of off-putting. It does not have a great look to it, and moving through it is kind of weird. Like, it very much seems like this was built in Wix, and they really didn't try to do anything else with the website. So, maybe. Yeah, it seems sketch, but this seems like a good enough campaign. The developers seem like nice peeps. And even if you're not going to back it, you don't want like the postcard pack, you don't want the game, the t-shirts, whatever. If you don't want any of that, at least share it over on Twitter. Get the word out. That's really what they're hoping for. From what I understand, the developer did say if they don't hit their goal right now, it's not a huge deal. They're still going to like move forward with the campaign and everything. And they'll probably do another campaign later in the future, but this is a big, like, they're trying to build the hype, the culture, and the community behind this game. So please, if you like the game, head over to Indiegogo, check it out. It's Beckoned. It's BECKONED, Beckoned, over on Indiegogo. They, at the time of this recording, have $8,151 with their goal is $68,000. So they have about 11% of that, and they have 23 days left to go with 58 backers currently. So please head over, give it a share on Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media that you have to get the word out about Beckoned. Please do so. Write some shit about it. Like, if you are currently at a site, please do so. That would be very nice. Yeah. But it's time for us to hop into our listener questions. Philip Renshaw, the one member of Australia, writes in and says, "Hello, you beautiful bastards. If you have the technology to transfer your consciousness into a super-powered robot that would essentially live forever, but was incapable of gaining an erection, what would you do it? Big Josh boy, you can't get an erection, but you would be a super-powered robot that would essentially live forever. Would you do it?"
I love this question because the idea of us having the technology to create a super-powered robot where we have essentially uploaded our conscious to this robot But yet with the possibility of getting a boner or making us be able to feel things with that technology just doesn't exist seems so far-fetched to me that we were just like, well, this is as far as we got, and then technology just kind of stopped. Whatever.
Dude, it would be humanity to be lazy enough to develop immortality in a sense, but not give it like sexual feelings.
I mean, here's the thing is like, and this is going to go into a bit of a like males, like as far as, you know, male versus female, males are always kind of being dicks about things and kind of pushing their agenda of like what should be the next thing we research. You think these motherfuckers wouldn't work on that shit right away? Like, come on. That would be the very next thing that they would work on after building this thing up. And I'm not gonna.
Somebody's like, we discovered a very early form of immortality, and they're like, wait though.
But like,
could we have sex?
Could we have sex?
They got penis?
They'd be like, no, do we need that? They'd be like, yes, please. And
like if you actually think, that's the first thing we need R&D on right
if
now.
You think
put
like
immortality in the back, we need to work on the penis.
And if you think you or I would be one of the people to try out the 1.0 version of this before it has that technology, like who the fuck? Like, why would they just be like, who are we gonna try this on? I would listen to this indie pod. Those two would probably work. Like, no one fucking would ever vote us to be the people to try that out. No one wants to upload our conscious.
But to be fair, would you do it though? If you couldn't get an erection, would you do it? Because that is the question. I'm not gonna let us skate this one where we just talk our way around the question.
Yeah.
So
would
you
upload
your consciousness?
I do want to blend in this question with the next one that's coming, because Chase mentioned the idea of would you want to live forever in general. And the reason why I answer this way is less about the boner part, but more about the fact that I wouldn't want to. Like the idea of mortality and the idea of existence kind of just ceasing at a certain point is probably my like biggest fear. Like I legit have nights where I go to bed and I just have like mini panic attacks because I start thinking about the fact that I'm going to die at some point in my life, and like I'll think of memories that have happened, and then I'll be like, that was a long time ago. I'm getting kind of older. I'm gonna die. And then like I just start going in this weird like fucking really bad kind of thing where I'll just have to like kind of like I'll start hyperventilating and I'll have to like ground myself. Like it is very much a big fear of mine, and I to this day don't know how I'm ever going to come to terms with it. But that being said, I would not want to live forever because the idea of it seems even worse. I am in so much pain as a 30-year-old with my back. If you're watching the video, you might notice I do this a lot. It's because my neck is fucking broken.
Dude, same.
I have such a bad neck. I have such a bad back. I'm 30 years old. It's only going to get worse. Not only that, but like, you know, the robot part takes that out of it, right? So it's like, yeah, you could get away with that. But like, unless everyone else is doing it, you have to watch all of your loved ones die. And then you have to get new loved ones and watch them die. And then if everyone was doing it, life would be so boring. It would just, there's a point where you have done everything. And it's like, I don't want to do that. Then it takes kind of the beauty out of what life is, of like, you have a finite amount of time. You have the ability to do what you want to do. In some regards, there's obviously a little bit of, you know, context there. But like, I don't think it's a good thing. And there's some people who would want it, and you know, everyone has their own opinions on it, but like I would not want to. I know I took that like really seriously, more than you know, probably this joking question wanted, but that is definitely my opinion on it.
No, I mean, I totally get it, dude. Like, it's I barely want to live now, let alone live forever. So like, fucking I would never want to live forever, especially without erections. Let's be real. Like a super powered robot, like that's cool. I like robots and I wish I had superpowers, but like I want to fucking get Isekai into a death game for a reason. There's a very specific word in there, you know what I mean? So it's like I personally wouldn't want to live forever. I am scared, I guess, just being like, you know, I feel like it's in our fucking lizard brain that we are scared of death and scared of aging. It's just part of survival. But like, I'm okay with dying, essentially. Like, it's just a function. Like, the things I'm scared of is not experiencing certain things before I die. Like, I really want to be a father, and I want to make sure that, like, Morgan will be okay if I ever die, which she won't, but that's just something I have to come to terms
like,
with.
how are you ever gonna prepare them for that?
There's a lot of it, and it's like, there are certain things I want to experience, but I would never want to live forever, because that sounds like the worst fucking existence of all time. Like, literally in every story that features an immortal, unless they're a fucking psychopath, they all want to die. Yeah. Like, literally everyone. They're just like, you know what? I'm sick of seeing my fucking loved ones die before my very eyes. Like, they grow old and die, and I still look the same. It would take such, like, a psychopath and somebody who's so obsessed with their own vanity to want to live forever. It's like, what would you do, though? Yeah, like, yes, you consume as much knowledge as possible. Like, that's a cool thing about immortality. You would have literally all the time to do anything. But also, think about this. You're a superpowered, like, you can essentially live forever robot. What happens when the sun eventually explodes? You're just, like, fucking drifting away in space, bro. Like, if you don't get vaporized, you're just, like, fucking in space. You're just like, this fucking sucks.
Just
can't
forever.
Can't even jerk off.
Can't even jerk. Yeah, what are you gonna do? What, you got nothing.
Yeah, it's just like, what are you gonna do until you slowly, like, find your way, like, moving toward another planet, and then maybe if you don't burn up in the atmosphere, you essentially, like, get down and you're just like, cool. I guess if they rebuild me,
guess we'll do it all over again.
I guess maybe then you'd become their god. Like, that would be cool. Maybe. You'd just be like, I am your Jesus, kind of a deal.
I wouldn't want that either. They didn't treat Jesus too well. I wouldn't want to be Jesus.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. But you'd be robot Jesus, so they'd, like, try to come after you, and you'd just be like, God, fucking karate chop them. You'd be like, I don't part the seas with magic. I do it with these fucking chops. And you just, you fucking karate chop people like no other. Like, you could karate chop worlds in half, you know what I mean? Become Galactus. Just start eating universes. Like, I don't know.
This took a weird turn, man.
Oh, 100%. It's got to take a weird turn. I mean, they asked if I was, like, prefer boner over living forever. Boner all day, every day. Like,
you should see a doctor about that.
That does kind of suck about being a dude, but you know what? Whatever. So hopefully we answered both questions, Chase. We pretty much answered yours very specifically, whereas, like, we don't want to live forever. Yeah. And Phil, if I had to trade my boner for, like, immortality to be a superpowered robot, I don't want to be a robot. So, like, the boner is just an added bonus.
Yeah.
I guess you do lose it eventually anyway, though. Like, that's eventually, just old age is going to take it anyway. So, like, maybe when I'm an old man, I would be like, you know what? I wish I was a robot. Maybe this is just, like, an age thing. While we're young, we're taking for granted the time that we have. So, like, when we're 80 years old, we're like, take away my penis. I want to live forever. Like, maybe that'll happen.
I mean, I'm sure you get to a certain point where things don't matter as much. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel
that's very true.
I feel like I would still want that, but I don't know. It's not about the boner, man. It's not. It's just the idea of living forever. It's not for me.
Dude, like I said, it's just an added benefit. Like, I don't have to live forever. I like how living forever is a punishment now. It's like, I don't have to live forever, and I get to keep my erection. Fucking sign me up, bro. They're just like, you just signed up for life. Like, you just basically took what you already have.
Oh my goodness.
So there you go. Will C writes in and says, if you were thrown in a prison for life and given one of two options of RPG or platformer games, which would you choose, and how would you sneak your Switch into the Slammers? So, Big Josh Boy, RPGs or platformers? First question.
First off, I really like these questions because of how strange they are. Like, why not just say if you had an option of one or the other, or just choose that? I like the idea of us getting
the world building.
Yeah, the getting thrown into prison part. Like, well, I guess if
I guess we're the ones who ask for this shit because we're always like, in what scenario do I get thrown into prison? And I get do I only get these two games? Kind of a deal. Like, we always ask for the additional shit.
We're
and
getting
now
all
that
the
they're giving it,
context
we're
now.
like, why would you give us all this context?
Yeah.
We don't need it. Like, you could answer the question before.
Yeah, I guess. So if I had to choose, what do you think I would go to jail for? If I was going to prison for life, what do you think it would be?
I don't know. I think you eventually snap.
Snap? Yeah, that sounds about right for me.
Like, because you live in Florida, so I feel like all of you
true.
snap at some point.
Some kind of meth,
but
like,
here's
overdose.
the thing, like, you have to go to prison for life, though, because he says you're going to prison for life.
Yeah.
So I think what happens is, like, you snap, you go full Florida man, you start a cult that worships alligators. And
sounds about
you
right.
just start, like, one of the main tenets is not only, like, bestiality, like, you're into the alligators, you're like, man, they got some thick, scaly cheeks, but also you feed people to
I was thinking
alligator.
like you have to feed babies to them or something. Like
like,
specifically.
something real fucked up.
Like we
because
we steal a baby, we feed them to alligators for our Lord and Savior, Allah-Jesus.
But here's the thing, like, I feel like Florida has the death penalty, right? I feel like they would. They're probably a
think
state
so.
that's just like, there's too many people here, let's just fucking gat them. Like, fucking misdemeanor, let's just pat. You know what I mean?
I don't think so.
No?
I know Texas does, but not Florida.
I mean, Texas is definitely just like, you fucking stepped on a crack. You in your head, you thought you would break your mama's back, so it didn't even happen, but let's just, like, fucking shoot you. Kind of a deal. Like, Texas is pretty okay with just gatting people in jail.
I don't know. Maybe they do. Death row?
I love how, like, you just don't even know. You're like, I honestly don't know.
Well,
Like,
it's
I have
never
no
been
idea.
something I've been concerned about because personally,
because you're like, I'm never gonna start an alligator cult. At least that's not what I see in my immediate future. But I was thinking, just like, if it's for life, though. I mean, technically, if you're on death row, you're still in there for life because they're gonna kill you there.
Right.
But like, would you have to go to a different place? Like, you couldn't commit your crimes in Florida because they'd kill you.
Right.
So we would have to, like, change this mythos to be like, you create your alligator cult, but in fucking Maine. Like, where there are no...
Well, here's the thing: is if you're gonna commit a crime, I don't think you do it with the intention of I might get caught, right? Like, I don't think I would intentionally be like, when they catch me doing the crazy shit I'm doing,
At least
I'll be in
die.
a different state and I won't die. I'll just go to jail. Like, I don't think that's the plan that I would have if I was going to break a rule. So
That's a fair point. So we're rounding back your alligator cult. It's in Florida. You're doing all your shit. They find you. They're just like, you know what? You're a piece of shit. You got to go to jail for the rest of your life. Which one do you keister? Is it RPGs or platformers?
this is a real tough one because I am a huge fan of both genres. Like, they are my jam. I mean,
to be fair, this also insinuates that you do not just get the option to play what already exists. You get to play all RPGs that come out for the rest of your life if you choose them.
Right, which is why I think I would choose RPG, because I feel like there's a lot more good RPGs than there is good platformers. I feel like platformers, there are a lot more content, but there's a lot that aren't good. And so I kind of, and plus the RPG genre is so big because like every game is an RPG or has RPG elements nowadays. So I feel like you could probably get away with some.
You're going to
games
scam
that,
the system. You're like, I get to play Call of Duty because it's technically a role that I do not like. The only thing you couldn't play is Cultist Simulator because you're like, fuck, I did that.
Yeah, it was like, who needs that?
It's no longer a role-playing game. You've already asserted that role, so you're just like, anything else, though, unless it includes, like, bestiality or cults, like, everything else, it's fair game. I can play it. So you think you'd choose RPG?
I think I would choose RPG, yeah.
Yeah, me too. There's just, like, I enjoy some platformers, like, I enjoy Metroidvanias and stuff, but I don't enjoy them enough to the point where I would actually want to dedicate my life to just playing that game. Right. It would definitely have to be, like, RPGs. I love way more RPGs than I love platformers. Mm-hmm. Like, for every, like, fucking Celeste that blows people's minds, in my mind, there's a fucking Dragon Age series. Like, there's like, Mass Effect and shit. Like, I get to play that stuff for the rest of my life? Fuck yeah. Plus, I'm in prison, so I get super jacked. Like, let's fucking go, dude. and there's all the sweet cheeks I can clap. Like, let's fucking go.
Okay. Anyway.
I don't appreciate that I just made that joke.
Yeah, that was a stretch, if you will.
So moving on to the next question. Speaking of sweet cheeks, how are you gonna get your Switch into the slammer?
Right up the butt.
Yeah, dude. But also, like, do you take it apart? Do you like take one
Joy-Con at a time, baby?
Wrap it in a condom, you keister it, and then you do the next Joy-Con. Like, and here's the fun thing: you're just like, you know what? I'm thinking I might play some Smash, so I gotta fucking bundle up that Pro controller and shove it.
We're gonna need a lot of lube,
dude. And then you get that screen, and you're like, I ain't got no Switch Lite. Oh, dude, what if you get fucking arrested when the Switch Pro comes out and that's the one that you have and it's like a 4 times larger screen or whatever, and you're just like, God damn it. Why didn't I go for the Switch Lite?
My body is not ready.
Oh my God. I mean, I feel like that's the only way you could get it in. I like how, like, he's probably like, let's get some ingenuity in here. Let's fucking say that you sneak it in a birthday cake or something. And we're just like, nah, shove it up my butt. Let's go.
When in doubt.
Blow it out. Let's fucking do this. Oh my God. Yeah, it just has to be the keister. I mean, there's probably easier ways, but if you're going to prison, you might as well just gape it up. So, last question for Mr. Chris Penwell. To really just take this down, I should have put this one before, but whatever.
Sure, yeah. This the theme of this question episode section has just been wild today.
Yeah, it kind of was like serious, then really not, then like let's do it again. How about that?
Let's go back. Yeah. Very much
so Mr. Chris Penwell from That There Active Quest writes in and says, what is your biggest regret? And to put a positive spin on it, what are you relieved you did despite having second thoughts? So first of all, what's your biggest regret?
My biggest regret. I think my biggest regret, it's kind of funny because my biggest regret is also what I'm relieved I did at the same time. It's very much a double-edged thing. So like, I regret not leaving my home for like going to college, like going away to college. I regret that I had the opportunity to leave and go to a college that was still in state, but just not at home, right? To actually go there to live in the dorms or live with some friends from high school that ended up getting apartments outside. And I really regret that because I don't think I ever got the college, that experience. Not to say that it's like the movies, and some people have that same experience, and not to say that I wanted that, but like I didn't get the same experience of going to college, of having like a lot of elements that I would have enjoyed because I lived at home. I lived at home and I had a commute that was like an hour or so away from the college. So it was like anytime there was something not specifically being in class, I didn't want to fucking do it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think I lost out on, gaining a lot of friends that I could have gotten, a lot of experiences, a lot of moments, whatever it might be. And I really regret it because, there's always that part of me that's going to be like, well, what if I did that? How would things have been different? And I think, throwing the positive spin on it, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be in the career that I'm in right now, which I very much enjoy. I wouldn't have ever found my wife because if I wasn't still here, I wouldn't be working at a job that we ended up meeting at. And so that would have been totally different. And, ultimately, I probably wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing this podcast. So, the thing about regrets is, as much as I regret not doing it because I didn't get a certain experience, I think that very much you should live in a world where any regret you have, you should take with a grain of salt because you experienced it is why you're here today. So if you enjoy any part of your life right now, you should probably enjoy the fact that certain things happened for a reason. Now, if you hate your life, then fuck, man, regret all day, every day. But I don't. I definitely have some things that I don't enjoy about my life, but there's a lot of good for what there is bad.
Yeah. My biggest regret, and I've talked about it just on the podcast, was being like a piece of shit, like all the time. Just being like the biggest fucking piece of shit while I was in school. Like we talked about it. Like when I was younger, I was just the fucking worst, dude. I was so terrible.
I was
like,
too, though. I was pretty shitty back in high school.
I just fucking hate it so much that I was so rude to people for no reason. Like I could have had a much different life. Like I think ultimately I still would have like probably fallen in love with Morgan and stuff like that. Like I don't regret that at all. Like I love where I am now.
Right.
But I just wish that I was a better person when I was younger. I regret like basically everything I did when I was a kid.
There's always time.
Which really fucking sucks. But I guess, I don't know, I can always make up for it now. Just try to be less of a piece of shit, which I guess I'm kind of doing. So that's nice. But
a little bit.
what am I relieved I did despite having second thoughts? This one's a little bit harder because I typically just like fucking run full speed ahead with anything I decide to do.
Right.
So it's like not necessarily having second thoughts about it. I guess the one thing was like, when Morgan, so she initially, we were dating, and once we were dating throughout high school. We've been dating for almost 10 years, and we just got married last year, which is still funny. But yeah, after like 9 years, we got married. But
it's okay.
We were dating, and she went away to college at like, it was still within the state, but she was like 3 hours away or whatever. She actually went to a school where she was like in the dorms and everything.
Yep.
And I eventually, after a couple months, I decided to move to Pocatello and to be with her. And I definitely had second thoughts when I did it, because like I gave up a good job. I gave up like all of my friends that I had, basically. I gave up like the support of my family. Like my family could still help me and everything, but I gave up a lot basically to like move there. It all ended up like great and everything. And I did sadly like lose a friend over it, which really sucks. And I feel really bad about that situation still too. But I moved to Pocatello, and Morgan and I, we were together and everything, and because I felt like that was the thing that really needed to be my priority, so I moved to Pocatello to be with her. And then we ended up moving back here, back to like Boise anyway, which is really nice because this is like kind of our home and everything. We enjoy it here, and all of our friends are here, our family are here and stuff like that. But that's one thing I'm really relieved I did, because I think honestly, just knowing who I am, I don't think we would have lasted if I didn't. Right. But I'm very glad that I did, even though like, I mean, it definitely sucks. Like I lost one of my like lifelong friends because of it. Damn. But yeah, that does blow. But ultimately I fucking got married and have a great life because of it. So that's pretty awesome.
You kind of, sometimes you have to take those sacrifices. It's interesting because you have a very similar situation that I did, where my wife had a moment where she was accepted. So there's this thing for people who live in Orlando or know anything about Florida, where Disney has like a college program. They have like an internship thing. And my wife was accepted to go there and to do stuff for the Disney internship program. And so there was a moment where she was like, I'm in. And I was like, that's great. And then at the same time, I was like, fuck, because that's not near where we live. Kind of a thing. And it was right when I was finishing my master's degree, and I was like, okay, I got to find a job, kind of a thing. And I was like, okay, we're gonna move and like take everything that we have, which is in this one part of Florida, and like move it all over there and kind of like leave. And it was one of those second thoughts of like, do I want to leave? Because it was very early into our relationship, and when she did that was then when I knew I had to end up proposing, and then we got married. And it was one of those things where it was like, I want to be with you. Like, I'm going to go with you. And ultimately it sucked because I went up there for a job that was like this subcontracted job. And like within the month of being there, they cut me because it was like a government job that it was something for the Navy. And the company that I had been brought on board with, they were doing such a bad job that it had nothing to do with me, but they were doing such a bad job that they brought on people. And then within that month, the Navy was like, this is dog shit. So get your act together. The project, you lost the contract. And so they were just like, they had nothing for us. And in a month I was just cut. And I was like, great, glad I moved all my stuff here to Orlando. It's like, it was really bad, but it ended up working out because my old employer was like, oh, well, here, just do something for us remote. And then when you're done with your lease, come back. And I was like, you got it.
Sounds great.
So it worked out, but it was one of those things where very much I had the same situation, but a little bit more of a rocky in between. Yeah.
I was like couch surfing, like technically homeless for a while, which was fun.
Ooh, that's
like,
fun.
It was great. It was great. Yeah. But that is all of the questions that we had for today. So that is the end of this episode. Thanks everyone so much for listening. If you would like to chat with us outside of the podcast, you could do so in a bunch of different ways. You can hit us up at IndiePod over on Twitter for news about like video games, news about the show itself, notifications when we put episodes live, if I remember to do so at the correct time. Just all sorts of fun stuff. Make sure to follow us at IndiePod over on Twitter. You can follow me, Vaughn, at Hyde Legion. That's at HYDELEGION for all of my dumb bullshit, like my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Hyde Legion for when I play Souls-like games over the weekends from 10 p.m. MST to 12 a.m. MST. Specifically Dark Souls 2 right now because I've yet to beat it because it's like apparently a fucking 80-hour game and I'm 40 hours in. And I'm like, oh my fucking god. It's taken forever. Especially this next boss fight I'm going to go up against because I don't have like enough of a certain thing to make him easier to fight. It's fucking annoying, dude. It's so annoying. But
the struggle.
You could check out the big Josh boy over on Twitter at _Jorsh90. You could check out his Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/the_Jorsh. And please check out his Everhood review over on the IndiePod YouTube channel, soon to be the Podnot. Also, I believe I made a Twitter account for the Podnot. Technically right now I just made it as like a placeholder so that I would have it for when the website really does go live, which I plan on it doing so soon, and that's at the Podnot, just one word, all like that, super easy. That one, soon the kind of website will be more live and active, at least I hope it will. So once again, if you would like to write for the site, you want to kind of like get your chops in order, I guess, try to get into the games industry, or this is like your first thing, hit me up. Go to thepodnot.com, go to the About page, and there's a Write For Us button. I'll try to put another one on the homepage because I feel like that'd be a lot easier, at least for right now, but don't exactly know how everything's going to go. So that is it for this episode. Of course, we've got our housekeeping that I'm once again going to do. Check out the Snoozy Kazoo developer interview going live this Wednesday, March 10th. That is about Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, their upcoming game. Check it out. That's one day after for patrons, 2 days before for plebes. Check out the IndiePod store for our t-shirts and stickers right now. They're super cheap, especially if you're a patron. You get 10% off of their already cheap prices. And soon to be more merch coming, at least like halfway through next month, I'm assuming, depending on how fast the commission gets done once we get the money. And check out the YouTube channel, currently IndiePod. Later it will be the Podnot. Check out, us on all sorts of listening platforms, and please leave us reviews if you could do so, specifically on iTunes, to help us out. And lastly, thank you so much to our amazing patrons, Will C, Mixomatosis, aka Mix, Zach Durham, Chase Hopkins, Philip Renshaw, the Wombat Emperor of Australia, Chris Penwell, always fucking drinking tea. He's always doing that. Josh Nichols, aka Active Josh, and Sam Fillion from Canada. Thank you all so much for being patrons. You're all so amazing. We love you all, and we will see you all next week.